all the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio!
Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast. It's about observing cycles, sharing insights, and solving problems together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. And I do welcome you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you reside on this beautiful blue planet, giving thanks for being alive today once again. The breath. Super clean air after all these fronts have come through. Have you noticed that the air quality across the United States seems to be just crisper air, for a better term? Seems like all the pollution's been blown out with the super freeze and then this last storm front. Electrical storm, to say the least. You know, and as we come into talking about solutions tonight, I mean, you can go across the news, and from the Aztec to the present day, it's just been this cycle of control of populace. So it's getting a bit old. So what are the solutions that we might look at? Actually, I got this spring planting guide today. So tonight, you know, what kind of fruits do you think we could plant for the spring? Like the honeyberries, or maybe the great Asian pear, the goji berries, thornless raspberries, these kind of things. Sugar cherry, sugar tomatoes. And also gardening with the moon. Since it is the full moon tonight, I have my gardening guide out here. It's a moon calendar for gardeners. Cultivate only. And if you germinate anything, like put a seed in the soil from the 5th to the 7th, you're just going to get spindly growth. But coming into the 8th and 9th is when you want to plant root crops, onions, carrots, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and grass. Those are your 2 highest performing days if you're going to plant something right now, 8th and 9th and 10th. Because right after the full moon, you get those days when the energy's just in the switch, and then you have to wait all the way until you come to the new moon again with rising vitality. Anyway, Ransom, thanks for talking tonight with me. I'm just focused right now on getting it done, food abundance, because that's where my mind frame is. But imagine, the gratitude you'll give when you receive the fruit from Mother Earth. Nourishment back to ourselves. But anyway, I'm here with Ransom Godwin tonight, Mountain High Time, and it is about time right now. So Ransom, thank you for joining. And yeah, how's the world spun another quarter of a turn in the wrong direction or right direction through the week?
It's kind of, been at a steady pace of their little plots and plans have been rolling along. Meanwhile, they're giving that same old kind of, soap opera type TV with the government. And I'm expecting the next 2 years of, utter decline, honestly. Not to be a pessimist, but just that's the way all the signs are pointing. Actually, I've been paying a lot of attention to Mexico. as I told you before, I have a theory that if they were really going to destabilize America, one of the first things that we would have to have is an actual kinetic war going on along the border, which has kind of been happening for years. We've been kind of covering it up. Lots of people have been dying there. But recently, especially even today, all kinds of activity where you can tell where the future's going with cartel wars along the border. And then you have other elements, of course, mixing in there. And then, then we got this situation in China. I was watching Cottrell because I kind of been trying to get any information since our discussion last week on that. And there is a chilling thing going over there. Just the rapid expansion of utilities to get rid of dead people is just astonishing what's going on over there. Not only are they building these giant camps, but they're building the crematoriums to go with them. So this is
that's creepy, man. That's super creepy right there.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to be doing here. Because it's still an unknown variant. No one knows they're not identifying the variant that's causing this white lung.
You're talking
situation.
about white lung then again, aren't you?
Yeah. So there's some pretty shady, weird stuff going on. Some of the theories we had last time about what and how things turned like it did as far as the pandemic is going. It seems like something more nefarious than that is going on, and it looks like population reduction right out in the open. I mean, I haven't seen the scenario where you had a totalitarian government, labor camps, concentration camps, whatever you want to call it, COVID camps. I mean, and then the crematoriums to go along with it. Since that time in World War II, when we're not supposed to talk about certain things that led to that, or it's the same thing happening again. I don't know how anybody could not see that that's what's going on. It might not have the same motivations as before, but it's hard to separate it when you're seeing them, and they're open about it. I've been watching some of the Chinese feeds openly talking about how they're building all of these crematoriums to deal with what's supposed to be going on right now. But I was actually watching a video late night that Cottrell put out, and he brought up the same thing about and it was weird. It was kind of eerie because I had just got through watching, I don't know how many videos and different people talking about them building them. And then he was bringing it up, and he was talking about, imagine all of the refrigeration systems that's being used over there, that's normally used for transporting food. They're being redirected to hold people in it. And we saw a little bit of that at the beginning of the first COVID in New York and stuff, when some of the people were dropping from that, whatever that was that went around the first time. So, but besides that, I think we have a real kinetic war brewing on our southern border that's about to pop off, and it's going to run along the same timeline as the grocery stores running out of food and also skyrocketing prices. That's unbelievable. I'm sure you've been paying attention to the egg situation, and then they're trying to give the same old narrative that they always have. It's another virus, it's the avian flu and the bird flu and the pork flu and the but they don't talk about the inflation flu. That's really what's going on, is the design collapse of our financial systems. And imagine, how is that going to react to financial systems when all kinds of people are getting sick, trying to pull out whatever little money they have stashed back to actually start to prepare for some dark scenarios, which I wanted to get in tonight in a more positive way, on the aspect of, what should we be doing as a civilization, as far as what the remnants of a free civilization over here in the U.S. at least. And I was thinking, we're going to have to start building, and we've talked about this plenty before, but like some kind of expand on it, some real scenarios, like what you should be doing to completely cut yourself off of the entire internet, electric system, and food system, just for personal safety, as far as the new trends that are going on in food production, on top of gouging prices, to build communities that are completely separate and apart from the internet. And when I say that, I mean almost like, a lot of people have social media. They have the friends on there, and they know this person and that person, and they're following people that are sort of influencers on the internet. But what I'm talking about is actually getting to know on the ground people that are in different areas that you can barter with for real. Not just like a hypothetical thing, like find somebody that likes certain kinds of fruit and vegetables that grow where you are at. And we need to make a network that's completely outside of the internet or prying eyes, a whole separate society of, I'm going to say along the lines of the secret schools that there used to be, like the Egyptian secret schools. But this would be a new kind of wave or renaissance of people actually getting together and avoiding the information system that is a controlling system, so that they are the ones educating each other. And the children from these families are learning to barter. They're learning the nutritional values, learning how to ranch, learning how to do all of this stuff all over again, and just separating ourselves from the system of control.
Yeah, Ransom. I wanted to follow on to that. When you were talking, I've been working on this video for the day, and I sent you a bunch of graphics in this to the Skype window there. So the reason that the Dutch farmers are being kicked off the land, they're telling you it's because of nitrogen, and now nitrogen, the boogeyman. I thought it was CO2, then it was chlorofluorocarbons when I was a kid, and it's just always been one thing after another after another. But what it appears, though, with this Flemish and the Radstand and the Rhine-Ruhr regions, so what they want to do is make this mega city. The World Economic Forum wants to make this mega city XL from the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg as one giant area where people will be put in, and it's like they're taking parts of Europe and squeezing and consolidating into a tri-country area wherever these three borders come together. And it doesn't matter if it's like Germany, France, it just doesn't matter where it's going to, Switzerland. It seems like the consolidation of these mega cities here, and that'll be 30 million people in this area. But I lived in China and worked in China, and a squeeze of 30 million people, there would be 4 or 5 30 million people cities in the same area that they're trying to get this many people connected to by railroad, and it's going to be a sector unto itself on the planet. The way it reads to me is it would come in with its own digital currency for that small regional area, just like you could have, I guess, the Great Depression when they had local currencies and IOUs and chits between towns and sort of things that people agreed on in the future will actually get you the physical like cash value back. But this time, this white piece of paper with a 2 written on it is worth 2, and it gets traded around. It would not surprise me if they came with their own central bank digital currency. I wouldn't even say central bank. It would be tri-state digital currency. But then who would be issuing that? That'd be like Central Africa or something where they're using French francs or Central African francs, still tied to the French franc, which was tied to the euro. So when you look at these plans here, I got to agree with Ransom that we need to get off these centralized systems. Because I would be the very last one, hopefully, to ever get rounded into this 30 million megalopolis thing that includes 3 countries along a shoreline with the center hub on the shore at Amsterdam. And let me zoom up the map here that I have. Yeah, it'll go from Amsterdam to Hamburg, and the far periphery would be Berlin and Munich, and then it comes back up and goes up to London. And that's it. And it's that whole zone right there, including Brussels. Airports, rail terminals, the channels there. See, that's how they can include London, because that channel is workable. And if there was a pinch, oh, wait, you can't use boats anymore. How dare you go fishing and use fossil fuel to go catch fish for protein in the ocean? That's why they built the channel. Now, that was all part of the plan, too, here. And Ransom, as we go on tonight, I wanted to talk about the power outage across the TVA area Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We were running power outages here intermittently, where it seemed that it was scheduled. Like every 2 hours, we went out for about an hour a day like that. And the next day wasn't bad. It only happened twice. But the first day it was on, off, on, off, on, off. So I called the public relations officer and had a chat with him. And now that I have my slides in front of me, which I sent a couple to you, it makes much more sense. But also, another thing I had pulled up there was this World Economic Forum. We're entering the era of a megalopolis video, which is beyond interesting, because they give you the whole grand plan of how cities around the world are merging as they grow and spread. So they want to control the spread to make sure they slam together in a super city, and they want to control the urban sprawl into megalopolis's greater areas. They're going to control, instead of it going just in its own organic fashion, whatever way a city would go, usually to the southeast or the southwest. Well, they could make a economic corridor to make sure that the cities connected. Instead of going out, they would connect together more densely in the least connected area between giant cities. So, obviously New York, that's such an easy one. But if you go out of Miami, then what are the next largest cities that you're going to connect to? And there would be about 3 or 4 of them. In Texas as well. Like, what cities would you lump together in Texas? This is the plan. It seems that 60% of people are going to be forced to live in urban areas. And then by 2100, I believe it's going to be 85%. So anybody listening to this broadcast, we won't probably be living that long to be part of the force relocated 85%. It's like 90 years from now, or no, 80 years, excuse me. So most of us alive now, that we're not going to experience that. But the workings in motion of it, and I have seen the same thing in China before. If you're going up and down the East Coast, it is nonstop. You barely even notice the transition into one super giant city until you get into the outskirts of another one, and then you make it into the central business district. And it's like that. It's like a heartbeat, like a breath, like barely anything would be, barely, you just notice a couple sparse rice fields, and then you're back into the megalopolis again. You can't even breathe. It's like Shanghai to Suzhou. Shanghai to Suzhou to Hangzhou. It's like, this is the plan they have for the rest of the planet. But so interestingly, to start it in Europe, but the deindustrialization of Europe happening at the same time. Remember, the war has ceased the natural gas, so they can't produce any fertilizers or anything that you need a substance. Where does the electricity come from? Well, first you have to have a substance called natural gas to burn. Or you can take that same gas and then do electrical and chemical processes with it and turn it into different compounds. Like BASF used to have thousands of compounds just from natural gas, just from carbon and hydrogen, and connecting it together in different links of chain to create different chemicals. So they're using the same 2 atoms connected together into molecules, and then rearranging those as many deep or as wide or as long as they needed to. And they made thousands and thousands of products from CH4. That's how they were able to Rubik's Cube it and put literal matter back together to create a different substance. A lot of it had to do with fertilizer production. A lot of it. And the fertilizer production is the herbicides and the pesticides and the fungicides, because there's more rainfall in many places. You need to stop the mold and the blight. Now, whatever happens, all these are gone. So the deindustrialization of Europe, I don't see any smelters running. Very little heavy industry, if any at all, continues to function. Factories and reprocessing facilities are shuttered. Anything in processing and food stuff is the only mechanized, what you consider industry factory lines left in Europe. So think about that. If you got deindustrialized, your property's worth nothing, and then somebody says, hey, come on over here, we'll give you full value for your home. That somehow magically got deindustrialized, but if you move over to this new zone, we'll give you full value for it. BlackRock will take it over, and you're into the new mega city. Seems like where it's going, Ransom. I'm not sure. But 20 years ago, think about today. How many people lived in cities compared to today? And how are they going to get 60% of the people up to the next 60, 70, 80? The next 25% of people, how are they going to get them into the cities? So today, 60% of people live in the urban areas in the world, 60%. But they want to increase that. So how's that going to happen without force? Or would it be out of a massive global food shortage that would necessitate people to move into these areas because the food lines and the supply chains bring food into those areas first. And if you're a citizen or a card holder of this area, participating in the digital issued, currency of that city megalopolis area, then you get to buy the food in that area, and it always goes there first. Other places it might not. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to connect too many dots at one time. Sometimes I'm guilty of that, Ransom. And sorry, the mic's back to you. You got to stop me talking.
No, that's absolutely the thing that they've been talking about for some time. They even throw it in our face with, sci-fi movies like Hunger Games and stuff, where you got these little government areas broken off. And, if you're rich enough and you've participated, you get to be in the nice little city and hang out with them. But if you're not, then you're stuck in one of the rural areas where you're not supposed to be being productive or using anything. And you might get in trouble for eating the king's deer or something like that. That's exactly where it's going. And it's funny that you brought up the megalopolis idea, because I actually live I don't know which one will be that way first exactly, or if it's already happened a couple times in the U.S., but I think LA area in LA was going to be that towards San Diego. Where I live, also El Paso and Las Cruces stretch up in a way that they're on a single big line of the interstate system where you're in an urban area, so to speak, and then right outside of that is empty desert and stuff. But they've designed this entire border area like that, and it's kind of obvious where they're going. In my opinion, when I'm watching who wins the governorship, speaking of these government areas out here, because it's basically the way it is now when you live in the western states, because you either live in Phoenix or you live way out in the middle of the desert. You either live in Tucson or you're out in the desert. You're either in Albuquerque or Santa Fe or one of the smaller cities in New Mexico, or you're just out in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing out there. There's no infrastructure, there's no water. That's the main part. So they don't really have to worry about people living in there. And if you look at these Agenda 2030 maps that they had quite some time ago, they showed the way that they wanted to change the interstate system to run straight into only city areas where it connects that way, and they have the entire GPS system going along with this. So like at one time you might have when you were a kid and your parents got lost or whatever, they busted out the map and they might have handed it to you to help them navigate, so you could tell them where to turn while they were driving and kind of where their tom-tom. A lot of those roads that are on those maps are not on the GPS system. They literally just deleted it out so that the navigation of these auto cars and GPS reliant systems don't even know that there's little roads and turnoffs and things that go off into these areas. So they've already been working on this idea for some time. And on the other side of that, you have what's just like the Hunger Games. You have the little areas. So think about Dallas, Fort Worth, etc. Or you could go to New Orleans, pick a big city. And what you're going to find is in the inner city and the bigger metropolis area is sections of ghettos already set up of poor, underprivileged people of all kinds, drug addicts, etc. I mean, the list goes on. This is where all the crime's happening. This is where the massive amount of government resides, right in the middle of these little weird areas of high crime. And think about it, it's almost like a one of those old stories of the wizards and whatever, and they have their castle, and they're right in a whole area with all the evil lands around them in the spooky forest. Well, instead of that, the reality of that is some governor or mayor of a super city or a megalopolis, like it'll be in the future. They've already shown us that they're trying to balkanize everything, every spot on the earth that's a smaller little governance of the world government. So it's top-down power. And then if you live in one of these little areas, you're not supposed to be out there away from it, and they're going to make it where you can't do anything. So just like those weird movies with the evil wizards and whatever and the knights, you have the city, and instead of the wizard, there's a government in there, and it's surrounded by crime and mayhem, and potentially millions of people that may starve to death and riot for whatever reason, political or because they're hungry, and then out further is the nice little areas where the middle class live, are the people that work for the state and have a big enough allowance to afford to live in these little sectioned gated communities and things like that, the upper middle class. And then you have rich people that have big old massive amounts of woodlands and nice nature. And it kind of shows you in the direction that they want the entire planet, which is just them owning everything and enjoying nature for themselves while you're squeezed into a concentration camp where they may or may not be building giant furnaces to take care of the excess of people that are going to be starving or getting sick or dying in future wars in, the little fight over who gets to run the little government areas. Like, let's say the Ukraine. Obviously, there's been a power struggle from the world's powers right there in that spot. Back into antiquity, right there in that Eurasian area. It's a strategic spot. Whoever controls that basically has a foothold into the east and controls the west, or vice versa if the power struggle went the other way. And it's always been there. I mean, you can go back, Persians, Greeks, Romans, hordes from the upper steppes of Asia coming in, the cycle is so scarily repeated now that you can see the feudalist. I'm calling it feudalist because that's what it best represents to me, that someone can wrap their head around. It's a technocratic feudalist society where you have all these upper elite class and their minions. And then there's the little people, of course, that may or may not get the government passes to things. And if you've seen around the world, they're starting to push this idea of a passport back again with the vaccine, and businesses are starting to, go back the other direction. It kind of rolled out just like we said it would, that they would give us a little bit of freedom, and then they would tell us, we already have those emergency powers, so we're going to use them. And this thing I'm seeing in Mexico going on is an example of where I think the United States might go if they let it go a little bit further, is where they're really making it scary for people to travel. Today, the cartel was like shooting at planes leaving the airport. You had passengers inside, ducking in the airplane. Recently, where I live, they had a big prison break where like 20 people were murdered. The cartel escaped out of the prison. And in the backdrop of that, you have millions of people being pushed into the megacities of the United States and Canada from south of our border. And what's going to happen is they're going to collapse the Mexican state because they can't handle the influx of millions and millions of people that are not making the entire trip. They're stopping there in Mexico. Some of them are hanging out right at the border, and you're getting already starting to be clashes between Cubans, Venezuelans, and the natives that live there. So you can see that it's so technical how they do this. They put the right people in to start these little, balkanized areas where you have different people put into their little groups while they're screaming, unity and diversity at the top of their lungs. They actually separate everybody, and then they make everything volatile, with different ideas. And then on top of that, lay the fear of violence, starvation, and other things that we're about to face. And then the scientific elite are still trying to get you to worry about the whole planet burning up while millions of people around the world freeze every year. They're not dying of heat stroke. I guarantee you, if you went out and Googled, how many people die of heat, versus people that die from cold, and you'd realize that global warming is one of the biggest jokes they've ever played on the people of Earth.
Scammers, every one of them. And the future you describe is downright depressing and scary. We need to do something about that. So with the understanding, at least in my understanding, the way they're implementing, and when I say they, I'm talking about the central banks, these royalty elite that have been around, the reins of power that you understand for the last 3,000 years, them. They control through food and energy. And you can see, currently anywhere you look across the United Nations plans for sustainability, this, that, and the other, it's a controlled reduction of availability to food and energy, because the energy is required, and also commodities to get the natural gas into the, to be able to crack that and make that into fertilizer, so we get a higher crop yield and a more healthy crop, which produces, well, better quality foods, higher percentage of proteins, etc. So knowing this, that the two things that are being used to control humanity, power, electricity, and food. Now, please understand that this is going to continue. This degradation of the lifestyle of the controlled reduction is the plan. They're telling you everything that's moving forward all the way out to 2030. The TVA here in Eastern Tennessee wants to reduce down to 80. They want to reduce to the 2005 base level and go down, subtract 80% of the CO2 output in 2005 by decommissioning power plants and then replacing it with solar panels. That is a controlled reduction. And why don't we offer a solution here? So everybody understands patents, the U.S. Patent Office. So I'm going to offer you the chance to get a piece of paper and a pen quickly, so I can go through a couple of these patents. They're a little bit old, though. 1894. Nikola Tesla, electrical transmission of power. That's January 2nd. It's patented. I'll read the slide for you here. Some friends sent some photos. They saw this mounted on a wall and patented January 2nd, 1894. Nikola Tesla, electrical transmission of power, patent number, and get this, it's a 511,915. 511,915. They're in the millions now, the tens of millions. These are some of the earliest patents. See, how many patents are, if you were to get a patent today, what number would it be of a patent? 10 million something? So this goes on to describe in the schematics of how to put together with magnetic fields, magnetic motors, it's magnets, pushing off of each other, but the ones that are, they're all electromagnets. That's the thing. The ones on the flywheel mount, as well as the spindle going around that, they're all electromagnets. So you could tune them to different pulses, which would make them break the bond anyway. But using, the Earth's electric field, you'd hardly ever need to put any power into that. You need to get it started. And sometimes when it would go back toward equilibrium, you find that sweet spot where it continues to rotate at the highest RPM, with the lowest re-input off the electricity produced off the device, which is generally about 1% or so. But if it's a one-time build and you're using the Earth's magnetic field to power the thing, it's free electric. Full schematics, you can check it out here. Again, Nikola Tesla, electrical transmission of power patent, January 2nd, 1894. Patent number 511,915, or 511,915. Now, here's another super interesting one. May of 1888. Nikola Tesla, the electromagnetic motor. Now, this patent's even earlier, the number here, 382,279, or 382,279. So that one preceded. Obviously, if the 1894 was a little bit later than this one. So it goes to show the exact same thing, the figure 1, figure 2, and it's a 2-page patent showing you also the different views of the motor. Same idea, magnetics, electromagnets mounted on a spindle. This is a much more, I should say, smaller dissected magnetic quadrant that the charge passing over has to pass before it breaks that magnetic bond and then moves to the next magnet, if you will. So the bigger the magnet, obviously the stronger the magnetic field is on it. So if you had a larger magnet riding on top of several smaller ones, think of it as a pizza. So the top layering, that's an electromagnet that spins also. Oh no, this would be the static one, excuse me. It's in a spindle mount, and these electromagnets, there's 4 of them, and they're mounted around a circle. Wires coming out into, looks like a central cable. But inside that, the spindle, the thing that contains the magnets that will break the magnetic bond and move in whatever direction you choose, by pulsing that current and making that spindle move and break, move and break, and move to the next one. But you need to keep enough motion there. Now, if you only had 4 big magnets rotating in there, it would make it very difficult for one to break to the next, to the next. That's why when you see a lot of these things on the YouTube and different, inventions and things, they're matching the exact same amount of magnets on the spindle as well as the housing, so it doesn't really work because it can't ever really break. It's going to be in equilibrium. If you use, 25 magnets and 25 magnets, they're just going to basically snap together as a big magnet. You just got 25 pieces instead of one big piece. But if you add, say, 24 smaller magnets inside 4 magnets, that would be quite easy to break and keep it rolling in the same direction. And once you get that flow using the Earth's magnetic field, that spindle spins. That's what they needed. That's why they use steam, to get that same spinning rod effect. You would not need to burn a thing ever again, ever. Now, you could scale these as well. And with the technology we have today, I think it's a little bit better than 1888. And I'm super surprised that these are not out in production when we're, doing Tesla vehicles, battery stuff, when we would never need this. See, you could even mount, this is the thing for Tesla owners out there. Everybody's running around with generators, like gasoline-driven, Honda 2200i generators or something, plugging them into their car to refill as they're moving along, burning gasoline to generate electricity while they're moving along to refill the battery, so it's like a trickle charge instead of going to charge all at one time. Okay, I dig it. I see what's going on. But why not put one of these patented May 1st, 1888 electromagnetic motors from Nikola Tesla, which, by the way, patent number 382,279. If you were to put one of these magnetic motors on a Tesla, it would charge itself indefinitely forever. And the only time you'd ever use any electricity is in the system to get the first cracking of the magnetic bonds away from, and get it up to speed and let it roll. And again, that ever minute pulsing to keep that brake moving, because the centrifugal force of the spindle, whatever you're using for that rod, to then, it's ridiculous. Why do we need steam? Why do we need to have all these transport systems? Why do we need to have these vast supply chains that are now being yanked out from under us, that have gotten on, they've gotten us to this point here? Why do we need that? We have all these magnetic options. They've never been, they probably have been, but again, it's all about the power to control you through reduction of energy, because nobody can really live without electricity, and the food. So, Ransom, I don't know, man. I like those patents. I'm super glad they were on the wall for somebody else to photograph. Like, how symbiotic, or how cool would that be if the person who had taken these photos that knew my friend that sent them to me and now is listening to this program of me describing those magnetic motor free energy patents from Tesla hanging on the wall that he took? That'd be kind of a cool circle of life there.
Yeah, right. That'd be a trip. When you were talking about that, I kept thinking about, how many times have we talked about really what's the plan behind kind of the grid that they put up, and a lot of people have had conspiracy theories about 5G and things that they may or may not be putting in their body. That I've heard theories about, turning humans into antennas, or we've talked about before. Maybe the system's more of a thing to block some kind of signal from the universe that we may be getting at one time or another. Ideas like that. But here's an article from Study Finds that's about 6G wireless technology could use humans as a power source, study explains. And then it goes on talking about how not only will we power the phone, but we'll also be the antenna, right? And it goes into some stuff that we've talked about before, Li-Fi, which is, internet over the light spectrum. And then you would have all of these little robots attached to us that are blinking back and forth in a spectrum that we can't consciously see, yet we're still picking it up. And I've talked to you about flicker rates that they've been, I don't know, decades and decades into getting into that technology, about how you can manipulate a human being with the flicker rate, programming the mind. And I constantly kind of harp on this because I don't think that people see the web or the connection like I do, as far as the products or the claims put out by tech companies on the possibilities of things that they now can do. And every time I read an article like this, I realize that they're just, pushing this idea out kind of to see the reaction, which is odd because they're going to go ahead with it regardless if people like the idea or not. And that's what they've always done. Back in the era of landlines, everybody was worried about the FBI or somebody tapping their telephone, and they were like, oh well, the government wouldn't do that. They have to have a warrant. And then we kind of found out they did that on a regular, and then people got over that as we got into the cellular era of mobile phones. And then when it became obvious that they were also doing that with the cellular network. A lot of people worried about, oh, they could track your phone, they might be listening. And then now we're in an era where all of that has been admitted. They admitted to every one of those conspiracy theories that people had prior to them admitting, oh yeah, we're doing it, whether it came through whistleblowing or the government just kind of bragging that they can do certain things like this. And now we get to a couple years after the 5G conspiracies, and here's an article talking about exactly what some of those conspiracy theories were, that they have a whole system planned to use, thin glass or plastic strands to transmit information, so flashes of light. There's some other ideas. I'm sure that if you're familiar with Morgellons disease and some of the theories about recent medical procedures that people may or may not have been mandated to do, and some of the structures, I'll put it that way, the structures that have been found inside biological life from the plastic pollution and on up. And I've given you this theory before, that now a program can be inserted into your body. And unlike any time in the past, the materials needed for nanotechnology to build a certain structure, whether it's a technological structure or a biological structure, it doesn't really matter. The potential for that science is a reality now, and they're kind of, just haphazardly putting out articles talking and speculating about stuff that is a reality already. So they're even talking about it right in here, and it's the UMass Amherst team says they've created a low-cost, innovative way of harvesting waste energy from VLC using the human body as an antenna. So we're not only and this goes into that idea. What are they pushing? If it's from Klaus Schwab to Elon Musk, what are they pushing? They're pushing the integration of technology inside your body for a complete track and control system. And even I'm not saying Elon Musk is the bad guy. I'm just saying, look at the potential for the technology. You have somebody that's into the biggest social platform in the world now, and he also wants to merge technology with you so that you can be connected to the hive mind in a sense. And now they're admitting to having a whole system where they use waste energy to power wearable or possibly larger electronics as well. But what they seem to not point out right here is that also from their own, article here, all you need is some extremely small plastic strands that could be anywhere, including inside the body. Now, I know that's a lot to swallow, and I kind of try to talk in code so we don't get in too much trouble. But with the awareness that new forms of control mechanisms that they just kind of rolled out, and we got to see the beta of everything. And I'm going to call like 2019 to 2021 and early 2022 was the beta phase of their population reduction program. And when I say that, I mean that in a big way. It's not just, reducing the number of the population, but it's reducing the reach of a free mind as a citizen of this world. So they are going to the extent where every generation from here on out is going to be completely controlled technologically, whether they want to or not, from all kinds of inputs and outputs in their environment of the human domain that they don't even realize are there because, the technology has been surpassing people's ability to, absorb the potential of what it can do. So now we're seeing them openly admitting that if, you can control not just the phone and track it everywhere you go, but they won't even need a power source or anything. And a lot of people know that their phones already have a chip designed to run off of microwave energy that can power the phone and, listen in on you and all of that stuff. If anybody's been paying attention, the stuff that they're putting out to, show people, it's 50 years ago. So when you realize that the kinetic actions of the elite now are actually rearranging physical pieces on the board, and you take into account that the technology that they're bragging about using in the future is already here, it's kind of like a blindsided attack that's going to catch most of the population off guard when they wake up one morning and the singularity has already happened. And what I mean by that is that this idea of a completely tracked, traced, and programmed society where everything from your identity, medical history, and the ability to travel freely is all tied up in one little number of their digital, identification.
Yeah, that's one level, right? One level. So what if you were to use the body for something different? Okay, we understand blockchain and what's happening with, central bank digital currencies, et cetera. Okay, that's one level also. The human mind can't store that much information, but it can compute indefinitely and touch other realms in the computation. But the storage of information of, remember this, remember that, all these tests we took as kids. I mean, how many people really got the best of scores? And, you go wonder why during, going to those schools, those people who got A++, where they recruited into agencies because they could remember anything on I look at it, remember photographic memory, and that's how they chose that whole type of people out of all the schooling system. That kind of thing. But what if you were to use the brain as a node itself running the computational power to solve some sort of algorithm in a different dimension by tapping into the full potential of computation in the human brain, running in sync with billions of other brains? I mean, if you look at that would be galactic type of computing power with the human mind harnessed like that. Galactic. At that point, other galaxies would reverberate through what was going on here. Like galaxies would have changes just from all that. Can you imagine 8 billion humans? Everything completely in sync in the brain? Wow, that'd be a powerful force to contend with. So if you think about us and all these things from the geoengineering, and I've seen Clifford Carnicom's work talking about Morgellons and these sort of thing, nanotech, different, that last 10 years was completely whatever it was in nanoforms coming down out of the skies. And then this time it took a different liquid injectable form. And I'm wondering what's coming next. Because you got to think, so far, if the majority of the people are at where they've saturated for 10 years out of the air, breathing air, water, of that nanotech is the base layer. Think of it as a qubit inside the body as the base layer to run other systems. Now you come with a huge vial of stuff in moving around the body. It's almost as if you could control the computing power of all the brains synced together on the planet through this new vibrational technology and 5G and different wavelengths through the air, you would be able to control a flesh-covered computer. Turning from a human to a flesh-covered computer. With the computing power of the brain and everything inside that system overridden except for usage of the vessel for the computing power. That gets into super biblical, like how do you even quantify that battle between dark force on that side to moving back toward light again, where some balance will come back away from that. And in many forms it takes to get us there. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm thinking too deeply outside, but after we come back from the break, we should talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. I was handed a newspaper tonight. Ransom, you're going to love it. I'll read the headline. We'll do the reading of this. It's about 8 pages long, and it's just ancient discoveries over in and around Turkey. And they found the lost city of Ash, Sodom and Gomorrah, and they even have brimstone. And I'll tell you what, I'd seen somebody who has actual brimstone from this site, from the Sodom and Gomorrah site, actually has brimstone actually in a box in their house from this site. So we'll talk about that in a second, but keep everybody interested to come back for the second hour. See, talking about city walls, ancient double-walled Canaanite cities. I want to dive into that because I know we got a million billion thoughts. But, Ransom, what do you think about if they could, beyond the control of the vessel is to control it so you can control the computing power of that vessel. That's what it is. So you can only think a certain way. So they want to control all your thoughts. Of course they do. Because then once they can control the thought, they can clear the space to get the computing power of a living being out of it. It's not a battery. It's a computer processor. That's the best way I can describe it. A supercomputer chip processor in each one of us, times a billion or quadrillion in every human. Now put that all together and this planet would split in half, I think.
I think that's kind of along the lines of the way they actually want to go, is using people for quantum computing. And you just kind of gave me an idea with that. With all of the controlling mechanisms that they do, if you notice that there's been an effort to make sure that all the media that's eaten by the public is dumbed down, really not very big thoughts. So everything becomes, kind of a kiddish idea. So think about that at the same time as why would they do that? If they got everybody dumb, well, of course they wouldn't fight back or understand what's happening to them. But on the other hand, their brain would be empty. It wouldn't be using its full potential, which kind of goes into what you said. It could allow them to use the remaining computing power for things that they want to do. And there's been several examples of companies doing that kind of already, where they sell you a product and you agree to let them use the product when you're not using it. And Sony was one of those companies. They did that with the PlayStation, making a massive interconnected through the internet computing machine to compute algorithms that they were working on privately as a company. So you didn't even know what your machine was doing while it was connected to that. It was just part of some larger, bigger program of a problem or a solution that they were trying to find, or an algorithm that they were trying to perfect. No telling what that was, but you could absolutely do that with humans, especially if you got them to a degree that they're not thinking any big thoughts or using the potential of their mind, their quantum computer that we all have.
Yeah, so what's the next step? So let's say, be nefarious for a minute. What would be the next step that you would need to take us one step closer to that goal? So let's say that is the end. So we know we're going to go through several steps to get there. So we sit where we are today with everybody's realization of where we sit today, going to as far as we just spoke about. Now, Ransom, where do you think the next step is going to be to get us a little bit further down that trajectory or down that track?
that would be obviously be the implementation of this system, kind of like what I was talking about with these little machines or phones or trackers or whatever you want to call them that are powered by the human body, to make sure that each person, in order to be able to eat and take part in social entertainment and, you know, go to the movies or travel or anything, they have to take part in the system. They have to opt into it, which is a weird, nefarious thing, because you know that when you make a deal with the devil, you have to agree to it to get these things. So it's kind of like that arrangement of literally selling their soul to be part of the system. I think that would be the next step, and we're already seeing that right now. I mean, when you walk down the street, you literally see everybody not only in their phones doing their job, walking down the street. All of them are connected to some kind of wireless device, or literally their eyes and ears are both focused on their little, monolith that they carry around with them, kind of like from the movie Space Odyssey 2001. They gave the primates the big monolith so they could understand something, and it was obvious that that was supposed to be the big screen. But in today's world, it's a little screen, and it's called Android, and you literally carry it around with you. I mean, I don't know why that people haven't dawned on them. That literally you have a personal robot that is your little snitch. It's your little government worker. It tells you when you're supposed to be doing everything you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, little snitch. Yeah, never thought about how much listening goes on there. We'll be back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Thank you so much for your valuable time with Ransom and I. Second hour is going to be exciting. Come right on back.
listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back to the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. Wherever you're on this beautiful blue planet, give thanks. Another day. You know, to have this human existence is something so special and so revered and so cherished and so sought after. And you're lucky enough, if you're hearing this, you won the lottery already just by being here to participate in this great change right now. That's why you're here. Yeah, that's why you're here. To take part in the change, but be a part of the good of it. And is that too, well, do I have to choose if it's good or not good, or if it's evil, or if it's dark, or if it's good, or I don't know. So before the break, we're talking about using a node, using your brain as a node, and harvesting the computing power of the brain of a human and how much power that has multiplied by billions. And I'm wondering if they do that every day. And you call that media, marketing, whatever it is. You know, the news cycle puts everybody in the same thought. And, you know, you got billions or hundreds of millions or billion people thinking the same thing in the same day about the same thought. Same with TV shows, like the most popular shows. How many people watch around global? You know, 100 million people watch the most popular TV shows, maybe more, or like series, I shouldn't say TV. But they're all thinking the same thing, and there's bending reality a little bit. 52 prepper projects. You know, because all these things that we're talking about prior in the last hour, and including Tesla technology, magnetic motor patents, it seems that it's on a cycle. And I'm super thankful Revolution Radio giving us a spot here to talk about such things, because I want to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, the lost cities of ash, and divine judgment in a paper I was given from Ron Wyatt. But would I be able to do that in other venues? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the too accusatory that I believe the sun drives the climate message being stifled. But anything we say here, it's all good on Revolution Radio, which I really appreciate, because we, you know, what we talked about tonight, when I go through and edit this, I am going to have to cut some bits out to get it family friendly for YouTube. Like, you're not going to get the full stream in YouTube. It's just not going to happen. Other sites, I can put this thing up like a Rumble and BitChute, right, where you can follow us live in the stream every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight, right here on Revolution Radio Studio A. And Rumble, the Adapt 2030 channel there. Mountain High Time, YouTube. Mini Ice Age Conversations, YouTube. But those will be censored. So if you consider free speech something that's valuable, Revolution Radio Studio A, donation going in there. Because we all need to support free speech these days. So, Ransom, I wanted to start with the lost city of Ash. Now, Sodom and Gomorrah, what do we know about that? A story from the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah. So what's the regular corruption equivalent to today's world? Because the interesting thing, you could go and talk about the destruction of the city and people turning to salt and that sort of thing that saw a blast, you know, and this takes us back into the Vedic texts of, was there some sort of sky war / nuclear exchange / the way it was described in the Vimanas flying through the heavens, and different things describe far advanced to what we have today, but the same anger intertwined with that to take nations or civilizations to war. That would be the similarity. The tech would be way different. But this stuff here called brimstone is the most interesting part of this. I mean, they got some great pictures here. These city walls, the double-walled Canaanite sites, but now composed entirely of ash. I don't know, it looks like two things. You know, looking back in electric geology, when I look at these images here, and Ransom, I'm sorry I don't have them to send along. I see a buried temple that's covered in tuft, like welded tuft, but it looks more on the very light gray side. It's at almost clay, almost breakable dirt type of covering over something. You can dig it out. It's not super incredible difficult, but it's almost as if chalk had been blown with a little bit of water in there. If you particleize chalk and you were to blow it in the wind at, say, 80 miles or 100 or 200 miles an hour or whatever, and then add the exact amount of mixture to turn it into kind of a sloppy liquid that would splatter on top of stuff, dry, and then just keep continuing making layers back and just covering the landscape for 100 square miles. That's what you're digging through. So it looks either like a mud flood, something like that, like a global liquefaction event, which would be expected in 2024. Now, again, I was talking tonight and I was trying to explain the four gas giants aligning in the outer solar system. They're all magnetic giants in themselves, except for the sun. Those four are the biggest magnetic fields in the rest of the solar system, all right next to each other, forming a what looks like a literal square, like a square in the outer solar system. And once these four get towards each other, they start interplaying and interlooping on their smaller, much smaller magnetic fields. But they start intercoupling with each other because right now there's very strange things happening with the sun. As we're heading into a 400-year low in solar activity. Nothing goes to zero. That magnetism, that electromagnet, that force that is, when you consider part of the gravitational equation. And again, Ransom, you talked about that last time. I forgot the equation for gravity. You'd have to refresh my memory on that. That is affected at that bottom dipole spot. So if you have a second electromagnetic field intercoupled, and what would have been 100% from the sun is now partially 10%, 20, 15, 18, 16% out in the outer solar system, those four gas giants loop together, what will be the changes on the planet, especially to the crust? And see, the top 2 miles of the crust will be greatly affected during this magnetic coupling. Max coupling will be October 2024. And you can see why governments are in such a hurry to do whatever they need to do right now to humanity, to ensnarl it, throw nets on it, whatever, control it. Because these years, I think two things are going to happen. First, we're going to get way more cataclysm. There's going to be huge amounts of fireballs rolling through here, debris. The magnetic field is in collapse at an incredible fast rate. It's like 5% per decade now. So we'll be another 5% down as they're trying to implement all these 2030 agendas. So you got to wonder, what's happening with the sun stepping down at the same time, magnetic field of the planet stepping down another 5%, the sun stepping down into a 400-year low in solar activity, solar cycle 26 and 27. Jet streams out of the flows, cloud cells moving everywhere, and the crust beneath your feet stretching and bending and squeezing and possibly sending out water mixed with mud, sand volcanoes, etc., through only the top mile or 2 miles of the crust. It's not going to go way down to the core of the planet. We're talking only, even if it's a top 1 mile that's affected, or even half of a mile, deep into the crust is affected by this different electromagnetic effect with a slight magnetic field in the outer solar system, 2 looping toroids on top of the Earth instead of usually just one. That's takes up more than the lion's share of all magnetic activity in the solar system. It's just the sun. And occasionally when Jupiter swings by or something, we get these big earthquakes on planet Earth. And when Saturn swings by and it lines up, you get these big quakes. And sometimes just Saturn and just Jupiter will line up with, and you'll get a supergiant quake. Now add 2 more gas giants in there. Uranus and Neptune are going to complete that square. So if the largest of earthquakes recorded on planet Earth are usually in that window of Saturn and Jupiter in a line with the Earth, what's going to happen when 4 magnetic fields are pulling on the same? Not 2, 4. There's going to be a lot of volcanic eruptions, and the top part of the crust is going to behave strangely. Now, here's an indicator. I could even prove myself wrong, and you can call BS on this when I say. I'm just going to ask you, in the last year, and I'll just say 12 months, remember, go back to January 2022. How many stories have you heard of train derailments? Because don't think of it as a derailment. Think of the top mile of our crust pulling and rifting where the tracks separated, and nobody noticed it until that very first train of the day went past it because it separated overnight. It separated 15 minutes ago. Nobody noticed it until the next train came. Derailments. That is a direct thing. Tracks are being pulled off. How many have you heard about bridge collapses? Something suddenly pulling from the bank of a river. Like literally the river expanded, well, the crust on the top just expanded a few degrees in arc, and then that whatever was foundations, the bolting couldn't hold, and it just came right out. And it literally ripped off the side of the bridge. Bridge collapses. Unexpected outages in fiber optic cables, undersea cables, and massive giant trunk cables that cut off communications or services around in many places. These are the same things that would be affected, the fiber optic cables, and again, the gas pipelines, the natural gas pipelines. It could be any type of fluid or gas moving underground in a pipeline, or oil for that matter. Those are going to be stretched, baked, cooked, bent, and stretched again. Unexpected fires, that happens when it short circuits. After it loses, if the outer coating were to rip, and that was just at the edge of something grounding out. But instead of grounding out into the ground like you think, it's grounding out along the concrete inside the building that's next to something flammable. How many unexpected, strange, weird fires have you heard of this year in big industrial facilities? Because that would be that grounding effect of something were to rift and pull on the electrical side, electric conduit as well. So look at all these changes across the planet that are what are happening with the infrastructure. So if you see governments say, well, it doesn't look like they're fixing the infrastructure, they're not going to fix it. Well, I wouldn't either, because I see, look what's coming right now. If it's going to continue to rift and break, why would you put the money into it? And think about going further into the cycle to about 2030. If the infrastructure is completely broken, the only way you're going to be able to give reliable power is going to be decentralized power on solar panel grids that are already in place. So if all the oil pipelines and all the natural gas pipelines rip out of a place and you can't get back to it for 50 or 40 or 30 years, they still got power in a little tiny place. That could be a town as a seed point to start trade again quickly, because there's already some means of production with electricity in these spots. And whoever survives and rolls through this will start back like in the 1830s again, 1840s. That is a reset for sure. So Ransom, thanks for joining the Revolution Radio. Thanks for allowing us free speech to discuss the topics. I talked too much in the beginning. I can't believe it's 13 minutes past the beginning of the hour. My bad, man. Please take the microphone away from me.
That's cool. I was actually taking notes on that because you were laying down some kind of ideas I can relate to. Let's just start with Sodom and Gomorrah there, and then we'll work our way back to the infrastructure. Sodom and Gomorrah, I always thought was one of the, in my opinion, maybe one of the first UFO contact stories, if you put it in a certain way, because the story goes, one day, a Lot was there, and he noticed that the Lord had come, and the Lord were three guys. There were three dudes, and he called them the Lord. He knew that they were different than he was. And let's skip past the, and I also wanted to bring that up. I forgot, you were talking about editing your stuff to make it family friendly. I bet a lot of your audience doesn't even know that, like with Mountain High Time and the mini Ice Age conversations, we let this stream on there knowing that at any time they could just turn it off because they don't like something we said, because that's like a whole little investment that you put off on the side so people can watch all your conversations commercial free on there, basically. Some of the people ask, why is it the same stuff that's in Adapt 2030? Well, it's not really the same stuff. It's more of an archive of all the conversations you've had with people. You don't get the daily reports that you get on, Adapt 2030, but you also get these live shows that we're risking, just them deleting the channel, because believe me, I've had other channels since we've been on the air with Revolution Radio, where I've got strikes and I've got banned for some portion of time because of something we said in casual conversation on this show. But back to Sodom and Gomorrah, if any time there was a time that is close to the time they described in Sodom and Gomorrah, that time would be now. And I don't think I need to explain why. So let's get back to the story without explaining why. But anyway, Lot there, he recognizes that, the Lord's amongst the village there or the city or whatever it was. And he could totally tell that they were different. He called them the Lord, so they must have looked different to him than average human beings. He invited them in their house. He washed their feet, and a crowd formed outside of the house wanting to do, some naughty things to these people that Lot was calling the Lord. In my opinion, it almost sounds like a UFO encounter where, like some aliens came down and was like, hey, we noticed you had a city, whatever. We came down to see what was up. And then we showed them kind of what was up, and they didn't like it. They were offended, and they got rid of it. I mean, like from orbit. It literally sounds like a story of, you did a bad thing to somebody's ambassador, and they went back and told the mothership, and the mothership said, you know what? Well, nobody needs people like that, so we'll just eradicate them off the face of the earth there. But
they didn't know the law. They didn't know the law of interaction. They just didn't know the universal laws,
That's not how you shake hands, bro. But anyway,
put the
it represents
away,
it anyway. Yeah, right. So we're in modern times now, and I don't need to explain how you can relate to that. And then let's move on to the next point. What's the formula? It is force that equals the gravity of each mass object. So mass object times the second mass object divided by the radius squared is the radius between the two centers of the masses. So now you can imagine that these four giant gas planets are on one side of the solar system, which offsets the entire gravitational pull of the entire solar system, obviously. And we are caught in between there. And if you line the planets up, and you make a little line from the center of the sun's gravity out to the four planets, and you connect those, and you connect like Mars and Earth that are kind of little right next to each other in between the sun and those four gas giants, what you get is the shape of an Ankh. And the Ankh is, showed all kinds in humanity's history, notably in the Egyptian culture, where you have the little thing that the guy's holding, which is like a staff that splits into this weird circle or a square, and it has a little cross on it representing where the two little planets would be, Mars and Earth, and then the top being the four gas giants. In my mind, I'm thinking of it's the shape of the Ankh. But anyway, think about this. So we're having changing climate in different places where we're having massive amounts of rainfall. Now in the United States, California, Oregon, and Nevada, Arizona is all getting massive amounts of moisture that's catching up. And I imagine by the time the winter's over in spring, it will surpass the supposed drought levels, which will soften the earth up considerably there. And this may happen again the next year and the next year. We're only talking about 2 years here. So if you get this massive saturation, what happens if a minor earthquake goes off on the West Coast? You're talking about a massive liquefaction event. Not only it localized by the fault, but the entire area on the West Coast, it will be saturated. And we've already seen boulders falling, mudslides, houses collapsing off the hill, roads eroding out. And this kind of is going around the world. So what you were talking about, a liquefaction event, that seems totally plausible in my mind when you put, two massive groupings of gravity on either side of each other, and the Earth being in the middle. You would think that it would pull on the Earth in a way that it hasn't done in a while. I don't know, if they've marked down exactly what's happening, but stretch that back to the infrastructure that we were talking about. And I wanted to point out kind of some things that go along the lines of this Sodom and Gomorrah thing here. So, these are the headlines that we see driver suspected of intentionally driving his Tesla off a California cliff, charged with attempted murder. By the way, all 4 people survived a big plunge off of a cliff in that Tesla car. And then here, Portland, elderly man's face chewed off in gruesome attack in the transit system. Just weird stuff all around here. It's like bizarre stuff that you only see in movies. Worker dies by being sucked into a jet engine in Alabama. And then you see like professional athletes dropping dead in front of everybody in a bread and circus arrangement. So the whole planet is kind of in this Sodom and Gomorrah thing coming into 2024. And you have all of these government agendas. And then you have, destruction that's set to happen. And I wanted to bring up the fact that I've been researching dams and infrastructure, because after our discussion last week, I kind of wanted to really get into detail about what that means. So our entire electrical grid is that of the 1970s. The dams that are all around the world, including in some of these new massive dams in China, were only built to last a couple decades. That means they're holding back massive amounts of water. And then when you get these situations where there's massive amounts of flooding due to these storms, like the one that's coming in from the West Coast right now, that's going to drop lots of snow in our global warming environment and lots of rain, which is going to cause rivers. And we've already been seeing lots of videos of that in California, of flooding plains and rivers that are above their normal height because of all of the rainflow all at once, which is obviously going to cause massive mudslides and weakening of the top layers of soil, just as a matter of fact. Now, get back to the dams. They're only built for a couple decades, so you get all this pressure on there. Some of the dams that I was looking at already have damage ongoing. So they're doing these little patch and repair jobs to the infrastructure. The infrastructure is set up for a massive fail. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm just joking. I am. So if you were wanting to
You're
cause
just a researcher, man.
Yeah, right. If you wanted to cause
Academic
a complete
researcher,
reset,
finding the truth.
right? If you want that reset, you got to have a real reset scenario. So besides all of the man-made things like war and the supply chain issues and possible reduction in food due to bad choices by governments, we're also going into a time where there's going to be lots of temporary disasters. I think, that it's going to stifle growing food, but also it's all set up to collapse seemingly all at once. And I'm not just, pointing out the electrical grid as just the way they do it with the dams and stuff, but also some of the nuclear power plants that they could have already updated. They didn't. They don't. They're 70 style. So if anything happens, let's say societal unrest or whatever the cause is, blizzards, hurricanes, whatever. Pick a thing, earthquakes. You have people not showing up to work to take care of these things that need constant, supervision. So we get a life after people or earth after people scenario where you just have all of these industries polluting massive amounts of things because no one's there to take care of it. For example, if you have a bleach manufacturing plant, it has to have constant, work being done to it, or, you'll have an accident and then things erode and they bust. And then you have toxic clouds of, bleach basically flying through forest, killing greenery and stuff like that. And the list goes on for these things. And that will just shut down and be massive pollution spots around the world if everything gets shut down. And we're seeing the sun, doing its thing that it's always done. And we know it's not about when so much as how bad it's going to be, because we know it's going to happen. We don't know when. That's what I mean. It's kind of irrelevant when, because when it happens, it happens. If we get a massive CME on Earth, that would be the domino that just set all of these other things that's been going on piling up on each other, and it would be like the straw that broke the camel's back. You would just see the infrastructure collapse, grids go down, and then nature take its course, which I know that they know because they are the planners that keep planning these failed ideas. Like whose idea was it to put a nuclear plant on the, where 3 fault lines go in California? Whose idea was it to put the cities all in places where hurricanes hit most often? It seems like these things are planned so far back, it's kind of unfathomable to think that human beings did it on purpose, but that there's a bigger, program going on, and we're just fulfilling the end of it before they reset it and start a new program.
Well, if you were going to ride on top of a natural cycle or allow nature to amplify a process you put in play already, just like we talked about last week, is the way that storm seemed to, the polar vortex split. It seemed it was amplified with HARP. That was fine. It did its thing for 15 days. And then the sun came around with 3 coronal holes and intensified that storm system. That is the craziest thing you could ever possibly imagine, where 2 massive cycles on the Earth and on the sun matched, so it had the biggest outcome and the biggest effect moving a jet stream. That could almost be possible between the interaction of those two, based on the storm strength on Earth. The sun grabbed onto that and intensified it. But you would have had prior knowledge, or have to, on stereo A satellite looking from behind the sun back toward the Earth. That's why I call it ahead, because you're looking ahead toward the Earth, which allows you to see the back of the sun. That's 15 days out, but the polar vortex, to hit that thing with any type of auroral ionic heaters, whatnot, you could have done that 15 days in advance also. And then as soon as, like wheels on, or like interlocking gears, and they lock, coming around 15, like hands on or gears on the back of a watch. And you get that one cog that overlays on both of them exactly at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock position. And it locked right in there. So this Earth magnetic field that you talked about, Ransom, was, you'd call it an Ankh. But I would say, for those who know an hourglass, right in that V point, that Z pinch, that bottom where the 2 glass from the top and the bottom of the hourglass come together, you get that little pinch point, and then it widens on both sides and goes out. So think about to the left over there, that's the sun, the big yellow thing on the left. Then over to the right is all the planets that Ransom and I are talking about, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. With the sun stepping down in activity, those are going to grab a higher electromagnetic potential and start interacting between the two. Because you got to realize that they're also connected by field lines out to the north and the south pole of all those planets, 2 from the sun. So if the sun were to step down, then that line charging into the north pole of, let's say, Neptune would be greatly diminished when our sun steps down to a 400-year low, and it would snap and just start to reconnect to the closest other magnetic field, which would be Jupiter or Saturn. And Neptune would do the same, and Jupiter would do the same. And they would start interlooping on each other, and they create that other field. Now, here's the thing. That is to the right on the hourglass. So those 4 looping magnetic fields in the outer gas giants, that's to the right, and it slowly pinches down. You got the sun on the left, and you pinch right into where the sand drops through to mark the time on an hourglass. Earth and Mars need to pass right through that, and that how intensified is that flow of energy? And you have to wonder, is it truly like an hourglass where the center point is the conductivity between the 2 fields, or is it more like the looping field, a toroid loop, where 2 magnetic fields are playing to the north and to the south, to the east, to the west? They're all different magnetic fields playing within the planet, which would be more havoc than it was if it was a directed one single current flow out, where boom, it would hit the entire planet equally. But in a looping toroid, it's going to hit different parts of the planet, north and south, in different fashions as they loop back in and out of themselves in these 2 fields. I don't know. I was thinking it's like a big Ripley circus, the predicament humanity's gotten itself into. Next act is, because I lost my thought trying to describe that, so I'm going to say, what's the next act in Ripley's circus of 2023? Oh, I don't know.
So the last time this happened was what, 79 AD.
That's right.
What was going on in 79 AD? The last time the Earth kind of pulled up in the little space where the sun's gravity is somewhat canceled due to the 4 planetary gas giants being in a in a square, like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are all going to be in this weird square opposite the Earth. And you would think just from the moon activity that we see on Earth, the tide response from the moon, just kind of imagine that as a bigger thing. Every time that we're in different spots in the solar system, we're being yanked on by the other, magnetic fields and gravity fields in between there. But then you get this point every so often that just is yanking. And we were talking about, each person kind of being a quantum computer. And obviously magnetic fields greatly manipulate the brain. I mean, there's plenty of studies that talk about that and show that. It's kind of like, I brought this up before. There's this weird movie called The Southland Tales, and it's about this guy that's like the Antichrist or whatever, but he makes this machine that makes free energy called fluid karma, and it uses the tide to power it. But in the movie, supposedly the Earth's gravity has moved like 0.00006 or something like that, and it's caused everyone to start acting crazy and going insane. And it kind of loops to that idea of Sodom and Gomorrah, where everybody has lost their minds. They're just trying to do more and more crazy things. I think what it is that, I've said this before, it's like the Earth has cabin fever right now, where there's nothing new under the sun, kind of how Solomon explains it back in the Bible. There's nothing new under the sun. So we're all trying to figure out our place in the universe right now. And at the same time, right when we have opportunities to learn about the universe and stuff, we have this faction of controllers that wants to make sure that they keep control of the area that you're stuck in, the prison planet there. And the only way to do that and to keep people from getting cabin fever once they realize, where the bars are at, is to reset everything. So why not use a time, and they're really into deep, how does this look as a, I don't know how to put it, as a spiritual kind of belief in the planets being gods? Because we know that, I don't know how many secret societies and elite groups really worship Jupiter and Saturn and things. So imagine what they're, getting all juiced up whenever Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune are all in this weird square of some symmetry in our solar system. And at the same time, like I was saying, with the moon just pulling the tides, imagine what kind of seismic activity, things to that effect are going to be happening at that time. And on top of that, we have a collapsing magnetic field that's moving. So we kind of have unknown variables. Like, what is that going to look like as far as all the way from our planet as the physical, what's going on the physical planet getting pulled and tugged at this time, but also on each individual person that is experiencing this kind of battle of the gravities and magnetic fields. Meanwhile, ours is shrank. So I don't know. Is all of the planet's magnetic fields also, I would assume, going to shrink to some degree, just like the Earth, because of the solar output doing whatever it does in this time of the cycle? So am I correct to think that, their magnetic fields will also be somewhat collapsed, which puts us in a weird position? We're just getting tugged on by gravity, and we're exposed to, cosmic rays of various different types, including from our sun, because there's really nothing in between us at that time period. So any kind of blast from the sun or anything will be pushed out towards these giant planets past Earth, and then pushed back towards Earth, because all of these big magnetic fields. Am I correct in thinking that that's the mechanics of how that would work? That we would get a 1-2, like say the Earth, and we've talked about rocks being pulled in by the gravitational pull. We have a whole side of the solar system kind of unguarded or unprotected by these planets, or you have the idea that I talked about, is kind of like a slingshot, where there's this corridor of the least amount of gravity in between these big giants, and the bullseye is Earth. So you got all these different possibilities. But am I correct to think that, like, if something bounced off of the sun and hit Earth one time, that because of the 4 planets being where they would be at that time, if we did have a CME at that time, would push it back, and we'd get a second wave coming from the other side?
Yeah, I was looking for this article that I'd stumbled across. I can't remember if it was spaceweather.com or if it was off of The Watchers or strangesounds.org, but there was a bunch of information from NASA about Io, the moon off of Jupiter, had the largest eruption they've ever recorded ever, like eclipsing anything before about 8x, for example. It wasn't double or triple. It wasn't quite 10x. It was only around 8 times larger than they've ever noticed. And it was more, effervescent afterglow in that, because Io, it erupted in front of Jupiter, so it was amplified with the light that was hitting the front of the planet. It was almost like a bouncing back effect, so you could actually see how far the jettisoned the water coming out of the moon. That's a system-wide effect here, the entire solar system. You know, because if you go back,
Vesuvius.
Yeah, Vesuvius was 79 AD. That's a good one. And then you got to realize, you know, the tumultuous time of the transition around the year 2000 and Christ being born, moving through the crucifixion, that whole era was that same era. The disruption that had occurred, whatever you believe is the story to be of that, and how you embrace that or fit it into history or fit it into religion or fit it into myth or legend or whatever you fit it into in your category of mind. That all occurred at that same exact time. And you can't tell me like 33, 35 AD is going to be very different from 80 AD. And perhaps the history lines are different and wrong and discombobulated a little bit anyway. Is 79 AD really 79 AD or is that really 35 AD? Who knows? History is so distorted, especially when you get back that far. But you got to think about what are the possibilities of it being in that era with that much tumultuous, different and change. Imagine the world prior and the world post, like birth of Christ stories and the change of mind at that time because of that series of events through those 50 years. That kind of change in the planet that occurred back then is occurring again right now. This magnetic field has something to do with what is going on the planet, how people are behaving, the amount of food we can grow, which is going to be the catalyst to, you know, maybe primal instinct behavior to start to feed yourself and family. It'll just like norms, rules, morals shall just slip away during this time and start again, Sodom and Gomorrah. Oh, by the way, if I could add to that, you know, I kind of dropped off. This paper's still in front of me. And, you know, I was talking about the global liquefaction event. This accompanies it as well. So the picture that they had in the paper here is super cool because I've been to, if you've ever traveled to Thailand and you know what a pagoda is, and if you go to other cities in Thailand, like Sukhothai, for example, they have larger, more ornate temples with steps in them that you need to climb to the top. They have a huge foundation around the bottom, usually square, and then stepped pyramid all the way to the top, and you're walking up the steps to get there, the much larger ones. That's what I'm looking at with Sodom and Gomorrah pictures. I'm looking at a stupa of anything that you could pull out of Thailand or Myanmar, Burma, Malaysia, anywhere. But this definitely reminds me like Sukhothai or Chiang Mai. Like it looks exactly like the same bricks. It looks exactly like the same architecture. Exactly, but they're talking about it being buried 3,900 years ago, but it's exactly the same as something that was supposed to have only risen out of Buddhism 2,500 years ago. So right here's another whole entire thing, just on the structuring I'm seeing and how long that would have taken to pass over to Thailand and that whole Southeast Asia area in India and up into Tibet and the Tibetan Plateau, etc. It's all the same. I'm looking at a stupa covered in welded tuft, a global liquefaction event, also covering a much larger temple that's been excavated that you would find something out of a tourist draw in Chiang Mai, Thailand, is a big temple with steps to walk to the top. It's amazing what I'm seeing here. And I'm looking at these city walls, these double-walled Canaanite cities. What I'm seeing here is, you know, this is something to keep King Kong out kind large and that older look to it. This thing is just so mind-blowing. The architecture on it, the giantness of it. You know, a lot of stories of giants come from this area anyway. David and Goliath, for example. I mean, when I look at this thing, I say, who really constructed this double-walled Canaanite city? I'm looking at that thing that's impressive, and it's gigantic. So these two things right here in this one paper have just blown my mind wide open. Is imagine taking Chiang Mai and burying it in white volcanic ash and making it wet and sink and almost turn into clay and covering all of Chiang Mai with that, and come by, and then finally you'll find a few stupas and Buddhist temples and larger stupas that you can climb to the top to on the staircase, and then you unbury those. That's what I'm looking at right there. That's crazy. I got to send you these photos, man. I got to send you the photo. This is the craziest thing, man. This verifies that the history that we know is off. What? 5, 6, 9, 9, 39, like 1,600 years? 600 years? I mean, subtract 600 years. I'll be kind and say 3,900 minus 2,500. 600. Imagine if this what we know as history right now is off by 600 years. So the year 1492 was like a few years, like it was a few decades ago. Oh, man. You know, we talked about this a little bit, Ransom. I'm going to let you go with it. I mean, can you even believe the burning brimstone from 3,900 years ago? Because here's the coolest thing. I met somebody who actually has some of the brimstone from this place, and it is sulfur balls that were superheated and on fire when they hit the ground, long burning, but they can't find any. Here's the interesting. They can't find any of these types of deposits on the planet. So that means it had to have come from the heavens, like a comet bombardment or some sort of space debris that came in. Similar balls of sulfur. Here, let me read this for you. Similar balls of sulfur have been found at 4 sites, and although numerous geologists have consulted no other examples of similar naturally occurring sulfur balls are found anywhere on Earth that even remotely resemble the foreign balls that they found at Sodom and Gomorrah. So they're saying it ain't natural. So I'm saying, perhaps it was bombardment that we're about to run into again. Higher density debris field in space that the entire solar system is going to pass through, but everything has a weakened magnetic field on it across the entire solar system. So anything out there, if we come in through a debris stream, which is forecast, NASA and European Space Agency are terming this year the year of fire. They're talking about the enormous amount of bolides that are going to come rolling through the atmosphere as we get into this heavy, dense debris field in space we are about to pass through. Again, it's a cycle. It's nothing like magic, mystical, anything. It's stuff in space. And if you wait long enough, we're going to come back through the same point again in space. And boom, we're going to get hit with all this debris that'll come rolling through the planet's atmosphere. That brimstone makes sense too. But then we're talking a huge cycle here, 4,000-year cycle. Oh, which is 10 400-year grand solar minimum cycles. So anyway, hey, sorry to ramble. There you go, man. I thought I'd give you some something to chew on because I know you're a fan of ancient history. Me too, man. I'm gobbling this stuff up here.
Yeah, well, you kind of add that idea to the position of the planets, and who knows what that effect is if we're rolling through a debris field and the magnetic fields on all of the planets and the sun are a little bit less than they are. And then also all the planets are lined up on one side, kind of pulling the gravity a little bit different than normally. Earth has got a little bit of protection from these other planets in different spots in the solar system, but they'll all be on one side. So who knows if that'll pull them in or deflect them or what. But just giving an idea of kind of this point in our history. And I brought up, Mount Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii. What else was going on in the world right then? You brought up, it was the time that they were first kind of forcing Europeans to be implemented under this new date system, right? So some weird stuff was happening. And in China, they were compiling
resetting
the
the calendar.
Confucius, right?
Reset
so they
the
were
calendar
having
at that time too.
The reset was happening right then. And not only that, They knew it worldwide. Like Confucius, they were compiling all of his works for what? I don't know. This is the time that the Roman Empire was, grasping their last breath, really, and they were trying to invade England and all of these different places there to get new resources and new lands. So obviously, they were remapping the world, and you can kind of see that mirroring in today. They were remapping everything. It was the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church, for example, and that set the direction for Europe and the Middle East for quite some time. And there was other stuff going on, like this was in the middle of turmoil in the Yucatan Peninsula as well. This is when a lot of the nation states were fighting each other for control. We don't even know what some of them are. We kind of just throw these names on them like Olmec and Mayan. And I went down there recently, and like I said, I see evidence of the reset right there, or at least a reset, because you have these older Olmec buildings with the fine cut stone, the complex mathematics. We know for a fact that's the people that had the ancient knowledge of a 52,000 year repeat of the precession of the equinox. So they had information from the ancient world at least, and then they got reset for whatever reason. And it's kind of this story that's been going on, and you might find today's world mirroring that in another way, that this is the story over and over again of the eagle nation collapsing, sort of the serpent nation. We saw in the Roman era, they went up and they got rid of the Druids and the Vikings and different people that liked iconography of dragons and serpents. And if you reflect that to today, you have the United States, the Anglo Empire, fighting the Chinese communists, the dragon culture, so to speak, for control. So you have the eagle and the dragon, or the eagle and the serpent fighting again. And as you know, in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, that's a major iconography there that they use, is the eagle people, the Aztec, moving into the Mayans area that was represented by a flying serpent. And so what are we talking about? Are we talking about bolides coming in at different places around the world, and people talking about that changing stuff? Everything was being reset at that time. But I also wanted to point out that it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't just like 1 year all this stuff was happening. About, I think 15 years earlier, a massive earthquake rocked the area in the Mediterranean before Vesuvius went off. And ironically, everybody there was celebrating the day of Vulcan, or the Feast of Vulcan, that's connected to Vulcan. That's why we talk about how ironic is that they already had a festival going on, that in relation to the Roman god of fire, at the same day that a volcano exploded and, killed I don't know how many people. And you can mirror all of these things to today, to this exact time that we're living in. And it's not even that far-fetched, because the planetary alignment's the same. And, every time we look at these cycles, we see a pattern, and the mainstream is trying to tell you, hey, don't look at that. Don't trust your lying eyes. We'll tell you what's going on. Eat some bugs. You'll own nothing. You'll be happy. Don't worry about it. We're resetting everything. And that slogan alone, you will own nothing and be happy, is, I think, exactly the direction the governments are going. And not only in the way that they want to own every square inch of the planet and turn it into biozones and megalopolis super cities where you have to, live in the smart city, and you're not even allowed to go enjoy nature because you might destroy it. Remember, you might destroy it because humans are bad. But like I'm saying, I think we're right at that point. 7% of 8 billion people is right around their little plan of 500 million people on the earth. And I think that's what we're about to see, especially if, rumors out of China, or it's more than rumors. I mean, even the government is talking about it over there. They're not saying which strain it is. But I wonder what was going on in 79 AD. I'm sure there was plagues and different stuff going around the world, especially after major earthquakes and world-changing events, where they seemed to be cataloging all of their information at that time and getting ready to rebrand and start new religions and start new ideas. Imagine the new idea that they're going to try to force on human beings. And I think that is the acceptance and the acknowledgement of an extraterrestrial force intermingling with mankind. meaning I don't know how they're going to put it off as angels, demons, aliens, whatnot, or an AI. They might just say that. And weirdly, I saw a video recently where they were talking about, since we went with the Sodom and Gomorrah thing, they were talking about the home of Lucifer, and they name the city. I forgot what the name of the city is, but that is today is Geneva, Switzerland, where they have the big super collider thing there, and they're smashing these particles together, trying to find proof or things from another verse, so to speak, another verse, not only literally, but in the way that they talk about the multiverse. But they're trying to get this information from this entity from somewhere, so they're outright saying it to us. It's not really that much of a conspiracy theory to say that we're finally in a time, and they're using the natural cycle of things to turn over to this age of Horus, or like the ancient Romans, there were worshiping the god of fire. And it's funny that you said that we're about to go into an age of fire at the same exact planetary alignment as 79 AD.
We understand the power of the occult using magnetic fields to accomplish different energetic tasks. So these have been mapped out, and we could also tap into these same energies and use it for the force of good, because it's here around us. This is part of the changes. This magnetic field will change around you, whether you want it to or not, and the way that bends your perception of reality. You can use that whatever way you want to, because we're all rolling through this change together. And I think that's the thing that elite are terrified of. I'm talking central bankers and old money and royalty and this sort of crowd at the top that wants to keep control over the money system of the planet and the energy system and the supply chains, and everything that gives you your basic necessities of life has to go through them first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and pay taxes all up and down. That's gone. So think about the veil being lifted, how quickly humanity would change, or think about how that veil can be pulled tighter over the eyes. Either direction. Because that's the whole thing, is these groups understand this time of change is so vast. But we've been, gaslit out of any types of personal energies that can change things. Everything's like, oh, leave it to somebody else. Oh, this person's coming to the rescue. Oh, that person, just wait a little bit longer. That group over there will do it for you. You don't need to do a thing. Just wait. And that is the only messaging around there right now, is just wait. No, how about using our minds during the changes in the electromagnetic fields? Because mind creates reality, thought creates reality, action creates the reality and the physicality to make something different happen. It's a beautiful world to create in. It's just they're keeping us in fear right now. This vibratory, that's like an interference pattern of all these distractions, is a fear pattern of interference. It's almost like the fuzzy black and white TV static, just but full of fear, and then thrown at you, and you gotta get through that. But once you do, then what? It's time to take our planet back is what, I guess. Ransom, sign us out tonight, man. I was given a book, Zodiac Science and Bible Truth. So think about this. We are on the exact other side of Leo entering Aquarius. But in that same article here, I say the Ashen Sphinx, which would be Leo, which would put at least 6,000 years prior, 3,900 years ago. That's way too recent. That thing is 6,000 years old, I would say. Not 3,900, but 6,000. Age of Leo. It was marked there. You don't have an Ashen Sphinx. You can't have the object before the zodiac time comes. Who's putting sphinxes out in like the Pisces time? Nobody. Who would do that? Sphinx, Leo. That's why they named these things. It's pretty easy to correlate them. 6,000 years prior. We're coming back to that same galactic crossing that Randall Carlson references and talks about so much. Right at this time. Massive changes inbound. Ransom?
Well, one thought to leave us with, or more of a question. I was wondering what the world would be like if the magnetic fields are collapsed. And more energy is pumped into all of these quartzite type rocks. Imagine the piezo electrical effect that you would see. We might just get to see some of these plasma petroglyphs come to life soon, just because of the arrangement of our solar system and the output of the sun. What a thing to think about. But anyway, prep up. The future is yours, right?
It is. And when the minerals start growing, flowing in the crust, you'll see the ley lines, and you'll understand why the temples are on top of the ley line. Intersections and castles between 5 and 10. Next week, DuByne, Ransom, Godwin, we're signing off.
Thank you for listening to Revolution